He's a friend of yours.
Yeah. John's on his way in a moment. Talking again. Ruth Ann, ready? Okay, we'll go with round number 2. As I said earlier, my name is Chris Southwood. I'm president of the Illinois Fraternal Order of Police, and I want to announce today that the Illinois Fraternal Order of Police, which represents around 34,000 sworn and active law enforcement members all across the state, we are proud to announce our endorsement of Tom Devore for Attorney General here in Illinois. And I would just like to say that Tom Devore doesn't just talk the talk. He has demonstrated through his actions that he will always fight injustice. Tom owes nothing to the political powers that have attacked the police profession, and as the state's chief law enforcement officer, we know he will have our backs as we fight together to overturn criminal coddling laws and return safety and sanity to our streets. And with that, I'd like to introduce Tom Devore, our next Attorney General.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. John, do you want to say a few words first?
All right. So, just a quick little history story. When Tom came to the state FOP legislative committee here for an endorsement and question session with all the other candidates, I could tell you for all the offices that we interviewed for, Tom's interview stood out above and beyond everybody's. Everybody was blown away. It was a hands down. Tom, probably, if you had a vote, Tom would have got the most votes for any office by any candidate, hands down. He presented that well. And why was that? Because he's independent. He might be running Republican, but he has very clearly said he will challenge corruption and what's right, regardless of party or affiliations. And that's all you could really ask in your chief law enforcement officer in any state. As I said earlier this morning, when we're talking about L.G. Sims, the chief architect of the Safety Act, we're now learning was under investigation for lobbying, basically improprieties possibly. It was the feds that did it. It wasn't Kwame Arola's office. Kwame Arola has been a failure and a ghost payroller for 4 years. He has done nothing when it came to public integrity investigations in his entire term. Not one significant investigation of public corruption in this state, with Mike Madigan being target number 1 that the feds had to take down, the guy who blatantly ran this state into the ground for 4 decades, and nobody could put him in their crosshairs but the feds. Not Lisa Madigan, his own daughter, surprise, surprise, or her successor, Kwame Arola. It's disgraceful. So we look forward as an organization to work together with Tom as the Attorney General to kind of right some wrongs, hold these rogue prosecutors like Kim Foxx responsible for not doing their job, and circumventing the Cook County State's Attorney's Office, if need be, to make sure criminals have some accountability going forward. With that, I'm going to give you Tom Devore.
Well, I don't know if I can add much more to that. Thank you, John. Chris. You know, when I was talking to people that are part of my campaign, we were discussing whether or not I ought to prepare a speech, and I kind of chuckled a little bit and said, you know, all my years as a litigator and arguing, I've never prepared a speech. I just come up here and tell people what I think, and so far it's worked pretty well, so hope I don't let you guys down today. You know, I'm privileged to have received unanimous endorsement of the State FOP Lodge. You know, it means a lot to me. Law enforcement's always been something long before I ever decided to get in politics that I knew was the backbone of any civilized institution. You know, our society relies upon law enforcement. If law enforcement is not there, it's not well funded, they're not supported, we will see a decay like we've been seeing in the city of Chicago across our state and across our nation. I'm well aware of that. You know, I've been in town the last few days and been traveling, and I traveled last night to a place not 6 blocks from Kim Foxx's office and only a block from the federal jail and the federal courthouse. And in that parking lot, just a couple of days ago, there was a gunfight. Not only was there a gunfight, after everybody scattered, they were so emboldened that they came back and finished executing a young man without any fear of repercussion. The video camera that's hanging on the wall where they were at is so big, there's no way that they didn't see it. And I asked myself, I'm like, What does it take for people to be so depraved where they'll commit those kind of crimes? We can talk about socioeconomic issues, we can talk about lawlessness, we can talk about all those things. Those are good policy conversations. But as a law enforcement mechanism, the Attorney General has an obligation to prosecute crime. And being a part of political conversations and policies that may go hand in hand with that certainly can be done, but first and foremost, you have an obligation to protect the people. And that's what's eroded here in the city of Chicago. You know, I live in the Metro East area down in the southern part of the state, and I have an example that I would like to give to you. My family and I were eating dinner at a restaurant in the Metro East area in Edwardsville, Illinois, a couple of weeks ago, and not a block or two from the city square. And an altercation started between a couple of people. It was very loud, it was very aggressive. You know, there was no physical confrontation yet. And within 15 minutes, 3 police officers showed up. And they de-escalated the situation very effectively. And I thought about that, about the support, because I live in that community, the support that they have, law enforcement and the prosecutors and the whole system, and how well they did their job. And then I thought about the conversations I've had with John and Chris about how we don't have that in the city of Chicago from the prosecutor's office, from the mayor's office, etc. And how disheartening that must be. You know, a year ago, yesterday, Miss French lost her life. And I was reading about that a lot yesterday. And I thought, what's happened in the year since that time? Has the city got better? The people that live here tell me no. You know, even though I don't live in the city of Chicago, I'm not one of those folks who believes that, well, that's the city of Chicago's problem. We live in a different part of the state. That's not true. The city of Chicago is the heartbeat of the state of Illinois. And if you think that there's not a collateral effect to us not taking the crime serious that's happening here, look at places like Champaign and Decatur. Those cities are starting to suffer from the same consequences. The collar counties as well. That's all people talk about is this crime. Kim Foxx, being backed by people like George Soros, is more concerned about social policy than they are doing their job that the Constitution demands of them to prosecute criminals. That's their job, and she's not doing that. I was on a boat tour a month ago. This young man was leading the boat tour here in the city, and I asked him, he didn't know who I was, and I said, why do you think crime is starting to escalate in the city? He says, sir, it's real simple. He says when criminals start to understand that there's no consequences for their actions, he says, they'll commit even more serious crimes. He says, I didn't think it was that complicated. I said, do you think your elected officials understand that? He says, I don't think so. Attorney General Raoul has also failed in that regard for not holding Kim Foxx responsible. The Attorney General, you heard Mr. Bailey mention it. There doesn't need to be a creation within the Attorney General's office for a statewide prosecutorial process. It already exists under the law. Kwame Raoul's never invoked it to my knowledge, but my administration would invoke it. We would come to Cook County and to the city, and we would have a dedicated staff that will be committed to when Kim Foxx does not prosecute these criminals, we will prosecute them ourselves to make sure that people are aware that in this city, crime will be deterred. We will prosecute people and put them in jail. And hopefully in conjunction with that, the policymakers can work and try to create solutions that start reducing the amount of crime. But until that time comes, we cannot allow criminals to continue to do what they're doing. Thank you very much.
Mr. Devore, the Chicago Police Department is under federally mandated consent decree to improve its policing practices. The Chicago FOP has spoken out against the consent decree. And this was obviously, the consent decree obviously started with litigation brought forth by Lisa Madigan when she was Attorney General. Now it's under a federal judge. What role do you see the Illinois Attorney General's office under your administration with enforcing the consent decree and overseeing it? What does that look like in your administration?
You know, I'm aware of the consent decree. I'm aware why it was put into place, and I'm aware of the role that the Attorney General plays in overseeing that. You know, I think there's a conversation that needs to be had with the city officials as well as the FOP and the Chicago Police Department to see whether or not that needs to be changed, eliminated, et cetera. I mean, as you guys are aware, we just saw the elimination of another federal oversight as it related to the hiring of political officials in the state of Illinois. So there is a conversation to be had similar in this line of how much longer that needs to continue. Thank you.
Are you in favor of police reform, or are you against it?
I'm in favor of police being responsibly doing their job. I think every police officer is aware of that. There are isolated incidents where that does not occur, but I am not one that will take that narrative and extrapolate it across a whole spectrum of police officers or departments. That's not what I would do. Anything else? Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. That's it. Go ahead. Thanks, Tom.